Hey y'all, my name is Annie and I'm so happy to welcome you to the very first episode of Pemberley, Oklahoma. I am so excited to share my adventures as I attempt to transform my 10 acres in rural Oklahoma into a garden worthy of a Jane Austen heroine. Now, like a lot of the country, we have had some weather, from record snowfalls to freezing cold, bitter cold temperatures. It's been a January, but it's February now. The sun is shining, the snow is melting. We have warmer weather in the forecast, but it's still a bit mucky out in the garden. So I thought today would be a great day for a cozy chat by the fire. I've got my jammies on, little doggies with sweaters. These were a gift from my niece Jen. Thank you, my Jen. So I thought today I would share my plans for the channel, a little bit of my garden origin story, as it were, and what my 2026 goals are for my garden, and also things we can do right now that will make gardening later in the season much easier. So perhaps you're wondering, why Pemberley, Oklahoma? Well, when I was 14, I fell in love with Jane Austen when I saw Pride and Prejudice for the first time. And not the cool one with Colin Firth. No, this was the 1981. And yes, I am aware that I am dating myself with 14 years old in 1980. Yes, I am about to turn 60. And when I was looking for things that I wanted to do this year to celebrate and challenge myself, because I feel that's very important to stay young, is to challenge yourself with new things. And so I was looking for ways to welcome the new decade. It's not here just yet. The birthday's not here just yet, but it's coming. My friend Nora has been suggesting forever that I start a YouTube channel, and I thought, well, that could be fun, and I could share my two of my things that I love: gardening and Jane Austen. So that first time that I saw Pride and Prejudice, now this was in rural Oklahoma and back before the days of satellite dishes, so we only got three channels on the TV, and one of them was the local PBS station, and so that is where I watched Pride and Prejudice for the first time, and I just fell in love with it and all things Austen. It's just become part of my life and who I am, and it's reflected in my garden. So when it comes to what I want to accomplish on this YouTube channel, I want to encourage you to find your gardening joy. Because my garden brings me a lot of joy, and it has been a comfort in trying times. And what makes me joyful does not necessarily what makes you joyful. So find your joy. What makes you happy? What do you like to do in the garden? So I want to encourage that. I want to help you find useful things, tips for whatever size garden you have. Doesn't matter how big, how small, what style your garden is. I'd like to be useful and helpful in that way, in sharing my love of gardening. And then I also very much want to be realistic. I want to inspire you, but I also want to be realistic. So, for instance, my saying that I want to create an English garden here in Oklahoma, I am very much aware of the fact that my climate here in rural Oklahoma is very different from the climate at Jane Austen's house in Chawton, England, Chawton, UK. Two very different things. So some things are not going to work here. We just get too hot in the summers, that sort of thing. So kind of think of it as, while you cannot rewrite Jane Austen's Emma, it is witty perfection as it is. You can't make that any better, but you can make the movie Clueless. So we are looking to be inspired by all things Austen, but make it work in our Oklahoma reality. Now, how I became a gardener. Well, when I was 8 years old, my parents moved back to Oklahoma. We had been living in California, and they were originally from here, and they decided to move back. And it was quite a change for me. But that first spring in Oklahoma, the daffodils, I had never seen anything like that. We didn't have daffodils in the California desert. They just enchanted me, because one day it was winter and cold, and then the next day you had these beautiful yellow cheerful flowers popping up in the garden. And to this day, I love a yellow flower. It makes me happy, and I love daffodils. They're one of my all-time favorite flowers. They're definitely my favorite spring flower. So I had an early love of flowers, of daffodils. I've already been out and checked on mine. There's a lot here on the property, and I've been adding more. They're just up. They're coming along. Daffy Watch 2026 is on. So fast forward a few years until I met my Mr. Darcy, whom I refer to as himself. And this is a souvenir from our 25th anniversary trip to Ireland, where I heard a lot of women refer to their spouses as himself, as in, the rose garden is looking really good now because himself helped me do some pruning. And I just found that charming, and so what started off as, something funny on our trip has just stuck, and it's a nice little reminder of our 25th wedding anniversary in Ireland. So when I say himself, that is who I'm talking about. Now, himself comes from a family who always gardened. They had tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, that sort of thing. But also they had a motto, their motto pretty much, their philosophy, as it were, was, if you own an acre, you mow an acre. Now, I come from the family that if you own an acre, you just mow a path to the car. And better yet, this little area in front of the house, let's just pour some concrete and not worry about grass at all. And I do remember early on my dad planting a garden. I don't know why, because neither him nor my mother liked vegetables. I mean, their idea of fruits and vegetables was fried okra and banana pudding. So I'm not sure why they planted a garden, but they did. They quickly lost interest. It became a weedy mess, and anytime, if you got anything out of it, you had to wade out there and get something. So two very different philosophies when it came to gardening. But when himself and I got married, it was important to him, and I always liked flowers, so I was like, okay, well, apparently we're doing a little gardening now. So in those early years, we moved around a lot, lived a lot of different places, and wherever we lived, himself always mowed and weed eated, and I would take care of whatever flower beds were there. Sometimes there were more, sometimes there was less. And then eventually we bought our first home, and one of our first gardening projects was a veggie garden, because that was something we wanted to do for a very long time. And then we started adding, I started reading gardening magazines, Southern Living, The Grumpy Gardener, I loved that one. Lots of gardening books. I joined my local garden club. I took the Master Gardener program and became a Master Gardener in 2012. So I was trying to learn all the things I could. And it was also in this time period that we did a bit of traveling. We went to Ireland. We also went to the UK. So himself followed me all around Jane Austen's England to all the sites, and then we went on up into Scotland. And so those trips really inspired my gardening style. I loved all of that, from a cottage garden to a big stately manor with various variety, walled gardens and veggies, and over here we've got the apple orchard and the woodland walk and all. I loved all of that. So that really inspired my gardening, and so that was what my inspiration. Also about this time, himself built me, well, when we were feeling fancy, we called it the Lemonade. But most of the time we just called it the Glass House. And this was, it was heated by solar power most of the time. It did have a backup diesel heater. And all this came about because we had a bunch of lemon trees that they spent the summer out on the deck. And then they would come in the house and they would drop their leaves because we didn't have a lot of light in that house. And so he built me this glass house to put all my lemon trees in. And that became my focus of gardening pretty much from late fall through winter into spring, because it was just delightful. You could go out there in winter and it would be like 75 degrees and you could putter around with your plants and start seeds and do all the things. And so that was the focus for that. And then in late spring, all of that would move out to the deck, because nobody's sitting in a glass house in Oklahoma in summer. It's just too hot. So that was when my gardening started to really, I started to get my style, my vibe of what I liked. And then there was a plot twist. Can you hear the geese? They're flying over this morning. So the plot twist. In December 2022, we lost our home to a house fire. Now, I am not telling this story, this channel is not going to be about pity parties. I am simply sharing this as an example of where we started and where we are now, and also how you can garden wherever you are, that sort of thing. So don't think that there will be pity parties happening regularly on this channel. No, we are all about moving forward and being positive. But yes, so we lost our home to a house fire, and just everything that you're imagining about how awful that would be is pretty much it. But no one was hurt. We had homeowners insurance, but more importantly, we had my dear sweet nephew, Samuel. Samuel had just bought a house, so he welcomed us in immediately and was like, stay as long as you need. So also, a few weeks after the house fire, the glass house had survived. And so it was kind of a refuge. We would go in there when we were over working, cleaning up and things, and we would go and sit in the glass house and, drink tea or whatever. Just it was a nice, welcome space. But then we had some really cold weather, and our backup heater failed, and so we lost a whole bunch of plants. And I'm not sure which was more devastating to me. Losing all my stuff in the house was bad enough, but then you added on top of it the fact that all my beautiful plants, this place that was such a haven for me, all my plants, a lot of my plants were dead. It was so sad. But anyhow, once again, moving forward. So we stayed with Samuel for a while, and we're 10 months in, about 10 months, yes. But anyhow, spring came, and I'm looking around and I'm going, where am I planting my tomatoes? I'm a gardener. We're planting some tomatoes. We got to have tomatoes in the summer. Where we're planting the tomatoes. And then I remembered I had all those pots from the glass house, those big pots that I'd had big citrus trees in, that let's use those. So we made a little area and we grew all our tomatoes and peppers that year in containers. They were all just lined up, and we put some irrigation to them, a little fence around them, temporary fence around them to keep the deer out. We called it pot hinge. I like to name things. It's fun and it just makes me happy, so that's what I do. And then I looked around and I saw this big front porch that Sam had that he never used. He liked the smaller back porch. And I had, some of my patio furniture had been saved, so of that I put out on the front porch. Any plants that I had rescued, things that I was digging up that I wanted to bring to Sam's house, and then I also added a bunch of house plants out there as well. And I made that the book porch. And you can find me out there lots of times with a book, reading my book. It just became my little space at Sam's house. And then Sam likes to make a cocktail. So I made him a little cocktail herb garden out off the back, outside his kitchen door, so he could go out and get, rosemary and mint and basil and whatever he wanted to put in his cocktails. So we gardened where we were at, and that was it was something that gave me great joy in a time of great upheaval. So you can garden wherever you are. Maybe it's just a few herbs on your windowsill, or maybe you have a bathtub you don't use and you have a whole bunch of houseplants in there. However you want to do it, you can find a way. So we ended up staying with Samuel for, like I say, about 10 months, and it gave us time to make decisions of where we wanted to go and what we want to do. Because the thing about a traumatic event like that is it is awful, but eventually you must pick yourself up and get on with your life and decide what you're going to do. And for us, the decision was we didn't want to rebuild. Supply chain issues, just the stress of building. We didn't want to do that. We'd already had enough stress. We just wanted to build something, not build something, but to buy something and move in. So we started looking, and we found our Pemberley. I just love it here. It has 10 acres. The house around it, the house is just a house meant for entertaining. It's very spacious. The gardens the flower beds in front have great structure. They've been neglected for a while, so that was my first project, was taking those back from the weeds. We also have a little mini blueberry farm out there, and there's a pond and a creek. We have a pecan grove. We have a big shop building, which was perfect for, we dismantled the glass house, and it now sits in a corner of the shop building, waiting to be reborn in some way or another someday. I think that's a retirement project. But also himself is always puttering and has projects going. So all of those are down in the shop building. So therefore I can park in my garage, which I really love. So yeah, it's just a lovely, lovely space. And when I knew it was going to be mine, when we were closing on it and we're coming out and it's ours, I thought to myself, this must be how Elizabeth Bennet felt after Pride and Prejudice, the book ended, when her and Mr. Darcy are married and she has moved to Pemberley. This is my Pemberley. Whilst I had never planned to move from my other house, we were content there. We always had wanted a little more property, but we were content and we weren't going to make a move. But life happened and you have to move on, and I absolutely love it here. So Pemberley, Oklahoma it is. My 2026 gardening goals. Now every year I write down, make notes about what worked in the garden, what didn't work, and then I refer back to them before the start of the new season to make adjustments so I don't make the same mistakes twice. So what I do is I look at that and go, oh, this didn't work. For instance, last year was our first year with the new raised veggie beds, and I way overplanted tomatoes and cucumbers. My tomatoes were all like growing into each other and flopping over. My cages weren't working, which I've sorted that out. Cucumbers, planted way too many, and I guess it was a great year for cucumbers as well. So by the end of the season, I was like, I am so sick to death of cucumbers. And I still have jars and jars of pickles in the pantry. I recently told himself we were going to start having pickles with every meal just to kind of work down some of the stock in there. So I will not be doing that this year. I am changing the number of plants that I buy and put in the ground. And I also want to grow more things in those beds because whilst we have a lovely farmer's market here, and I love to go down on Saturday morning and pick out a big, beautiful bouquet from my favorite farmer, Cassie, and get my produce and berries and peaches and all the things. I love that. There are certain things that really would serve me so much better if they were in my garden. For instance, salad greens. We've all done it, bought a bag of lettuce at the grocery store or a bundle at the farmer's market, and you use a handful for your burger on top of your tacos, and the rest of it rots in the bottom of your fridge, which is just wasteful, and you got to clean that ick out of your fridge and whatnot. So I want to have more salad greens to go out and just pick a handful for whatever meal we are having. So, and to have a different variety of things that maybe are a little bit not available from the farmer's market, or also something I just wanted to try, that sort of thing. So, and then when it comes to the flowers, yes, I have flowers in my landscape, but I want to be able to pick more to make like little arrangements for all over the house, because I usually do buy a big bouquet from Cassie and I set it on my dining room table. But I would like to have little bouquets all through the house, just fill the house with flowers. So that is my first goal. I want to grow more food and more flowers. And my second garden goal has been on my list, I think, every year forever. And we just keep working toward it. But I want to add more late summer, early fall color to my garden. That is when the garden is the saddest in Oklahoma. August, when it's been so hot and so dry, and all your early planted summer annuals are just sad and tired. So I want to look for things when I plant shop this year. I want to look for things that are late blooming, late summer, early fall. I also want to look for things with fall color and winter interest, so I can have more, not just have my garden shine from like March to June, all through the year, have something interesting in the garden. So that has been a long-term goal, and one that we will probably continue working on for the next however long. And then my third goal, my big project of 2026. Every year I pick one big project. And this year it's going to be a rain garden. So we have this little dry creek bed. When it rains, all the water rushes through there and then channels out and drains down and eventually goes to the creek that's way back over there. So for most of the time it's dry, but you do have moments when it's really, really wet. And so there's a whole system on how to build a rain garden, what plants work where. And so we will be doing, there will be some episodes about that. And I have made a start. Apparently I planted some zinnias out there. I don't remember planting, but they came up last year. And then I've been adding irises and daylilies, and I also planted grape hyacinths along both sides to mimic water. So that will be my big ongoing project for 2026. So those are my projects. I encourage you to pick out three. Three is a good number. 3 is doable. 3 is not overwhelming, because you have to pace yourself. So pick out your 3 projects, whatever those are for you, big, small, whatever, and write them down, or make some notes of what you want. What do you want to accomplish in your garden in 2026? Now here in Oklahoma, the last freeze date for my area is sometime around April 1st, and that's an average. So for the most part, April 15th is when you start planting your tomatoes, your peppers, your summer annuals in your containers, anything warm weather, your warm weather stuff. But this is the 1st of February, so we got some time. So what can we do right now to get a head start on our gardening season? And so we have plenty of time to enjoy that very busy planting season in April when we're putting all the fun stuff in. So what can we do right now? So once again, I have picked three things that I am going to be working on. And the first one is organizing and gathering my stuff. I am very bad about at the end of season, just slamming stuff in. You're bringing plants in, whatnot. And so right now, my little gardening area off the garage where I keep all my gardening supplies is an absolute mess. My potting bench is a disaster. So that's my first priority. I need to get that area tidied up, organized, ready to go, so I can start some seeds, I can start some bulbs, some various things early. That's my first priority. I have got to get that done. So what do you need to do? Do you need to get new gardening gloves or a new hat, or is there a tool that needs repaired or replaced, or some general upkeep? What can you do right now that's going to make gardening that much easier for you in the next few weeks? So that is my first one. My second one is we have a lot of trees. So after any weather event, thunderstorms, snow, whatever, we always have a bunch of downed limbs. So pick up sticks, we need to do that. And also we have a bunch of holly back here that have dead limbs that just need pruned out. There's a few shrubs that are dead that just need dug out. So I want to get that done. Those are all things that I can do right now and get a head start on things. So there's that. And then my third thing is something you should not have to do in winter, but you must. Winter weeding. I looked out my laundry room window the other day to see how the snow was melting and saw an entire patch of weeds in my front flower bed. It's been -3 degrees and we still have weeds. And it's getting warmer in the next few days, so we're gonna have more weeds pop up, and I wanna get a handle on that. I don't want to let that go. So my first goal out in the actual get your hands in the dirt gardening is some winter weeding. Now, to say I am going to weed the entire garden this weekend is very overwhelming, and so I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is there's the concept that I use in my house. I watch a YouTuber, her name is Diane in Denmark, and she is all about cozy vibes and your daily routines and your weekly routines, and not being overwhelmed taking care of your home. And so I have been thinking about taking that out into the garden. And then just a few days ago, I was watching Laura from Garden Answer, and she was talking about things to make gardening easier. And she referenced how she used to work her garden in zones, and she has some older videos on that I watched, where you're not trying to do the entire thing all at once. You're working in zones. So for me, my first zone that I am going to work on is the front of house. Welcome to Pemberley. I don't want you to see weeds growing right side my steps in front of my house. So my first zone is going to be on either side of the house, extending on down to where we pull in the driveway to the garage, because it should also be beautiful where my first view when I pull into my house. So that's my first zone. And then my second zone will be the kitchen gardens. The raised veggie beds, my herb gardens, and that sort of thing. All in there, everything edible, because I want to get some salad greens going. They're a cool weather crop. We can get those going now. So that will be zone 2. Zone 3 will be my back border. That was last year's big project, and I made a lot of progress on getting weeds out of there. I've added a ton of perennials. The thought process being the more plants you have in there, the less room there are for weeds. But I don't want to lose my momentum back there, so I want to get started weeding on that. And it runs from this end is sunny all the way down to this end that is shady. So it's a big project, but it's also it's one I really, really enjoy. So I don't want to lose the momentum on that. So that is zone 3. And then zone 4 will be the areas with like gravel and whatnot, because you get grass coming up in that. And we have what I call the Goose Play Park. The former owners left a swing set slide combo thing out there, and the geese like to sit on it. So the Geese Play Park. But it gets grass in there, so we want to stay on top of that. And then because we have a lot of limbs and branches and whatnot, we have a fire pit, and himself took the leftover block from building the raised beds, and he made this ring to enclose the fire pit. And it also has gravel in it, so you want to keep any grass out of that. And let me just say, this is a work of art. It just extends out of the landscape. So I think I'm going to call it Fire Hinge. It's just beautiful. And then also in that zone is my big project of the dry creek bed, the rain garden. We want to get started on that, pulling weeds. We don't want to let that get out of control, especially since that is going to be our big project. So that's my 3. So I encourage you to pick up sticks, trim up dead stuff out of your landscape, whatever, pick 3 that you need to do. Things that you can do now that is going to make your gardening so much easier to come. So my final Friday thought, Flower Friday. When I was deciding when I wanted my videos to go live on YouTube, what day would be best and whatnot, I decided on Friday, because for years now I have joined with my dear friend Heather in Flower Friday. So every Friday we share what's looking good in our garden, or this time of year, maybe an amaryllis blooming, or a flashback to something we really loved, whatever. So we pick our Flower Friday picture, and I have shared that for years on my Facebook and my Instagram, my family Instagram. So I decided that this should just be an extension of Flower Friday. So I will be posting my Flower Friday pics in the community section here on YouTube. I've also done whatever I needed to do to open that up where you can post a picture and comments as well. So if you want to share your Flower Friday pics, I would love to see them. If you want to just share a picture of something in your garden that's bringing you joy right now, I would love to see that. And then also I have made a specific Instagram for this channel. It's also called Pemberley, Oklahoma, and I will be sharing my Friday flower pics there, and also, you know, little things that I'm doing throughout the week. So yeah. So happy Flower Friday, and I will see you next week.